And now we're going to have a really cool presentation by someone that if you've been here before, and I know a number of you have, that you've seen before, and that is Amanda Boxtel, who is, yes, go Amanda, Bridging Bionics. She had a skiing accident, and I think she will tell you her own story very briefly. And then she's going to bring someone in that will tell us about the future of exoskeletons in space. Hi, darling.
Hi, darling.
X-Go.
Let's go. Thank you so much. An idea doesn't grow unless it's shared. Today, I'm casting out a really cool, big idea that has the potential to become a global mobility solution. I've been paralyzed for 23 years, and I'm paralyzed from the pelvis down. The bionic exoskeleton suit that I'm wearing enables me to stand up, to walk, and it really helps me with my quality of life. Bridging Bionics Foundation was created to bridge mobility with bionic technology. Now, I've walked in 4 of these different types of exoskeleton suits. There are several exoskeletons that are being manufactured and sold in 7 different countries around the world. But this is just the beginning of this technology. There's room for improvement. I love my robot, but it can be better. The global market challenges for this device and others similar to this device are cost, affordability, weight. How do we minimize the risk of falling? How do we make it more accessible, sustainable? And how do we make it more functional and to individualize it so it's customized to the person? How cool would that be? So, this is a big idea. What if we could create a global mobility solution for anybody that has a musculoskeletal challenge, where they have complete freedom of mobility, and the technology becomes almost an extension of their senses? What if we could create an exoskeletal suit that is made from smart materials, where it's flexible and rigid, where it's ultra lightweight, compact, sustainable, accessible to the masses, and yes, affordable. So it becomes a global mobility solution. And what if we had a really cool, creative means of meeting that goal by engineering and designing the first dual-purpose space terrestrial exoskeleton suit that becomes a personal utility for an astronaut. What it will do, potentially, it's a big idea, is to provide resistive forces in space and compress the spine for an astronaut. So an astronaut, he or she, can exercise and have optimal health. But when they return to Earth, it's rehabilitative too. We've reached out to retired Canadian astronaut, Colonel Chris Hadfield.
Do we have this guy?
Let me just see. And what I'd like to do, we've got Colonel Chris Hadfield coming in via Skype. We've reached out to him so that we can ask him some questions, so he can be an advisor to enrich our understanding of how the body operates, what happens to the body in space. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really honored and very humbled to introduce to you Colonel Chris Hadfield.
Hello, Amanda. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you really well. Can you see me?
I can hear you very well. I can't see you, but hopefully you can see and hear me all right. And I listened to what you just had to say, as well as a little bit of the presenter before you. And so I appreciate the topic and very much appreciate the opportunity to discuss some ideas with you over the next 15 minutes or so.
Well, I think we've got probably maybe about 8 or 10 minutes, so we've got to be really speedy. But I want to first welcome you to Aspen, Colorado. And I am standing, Colonel Hadfield, I'm paralyzed from the waist down or pelvis down. I sustained a spinal cord injury 23 years ago. I am standing before you and the audience in a bionic exoskeleton suit. Can you tell me, I know that, this suit helps me have a better quality of life. My circulation is improved when I walk in this device. My edema or swelling goes down. My organs, they're meant to hang. And so here I am standing, and I have a much better quality of life. My neuropathic nerve pain dissipates almost completely when I walk in this. Can you speak to what zero gravity does to the body and the effects that it has on the brain?
Sure, Amanda. And, I've been using technology my whole life to allow me to go places that I couldn't just go with the body that I have. I was a fighter pilot. We wore a G-suit that would squeeze the lower body. I've worn helmets and masks. As an astronaut, I've worn pressure suits and a suit to do a spacewalk. None of those things would be possible. All of those are forms of exoskeletons that allow you to take whatever body you have and give it either a set of environmental conditions or a strength and a power that will allow it to withstand an environment that it can't withstand on its own. So to me, fundamentally, I think your idea is brilliant. It's a natural extension of what we've been doing. And also the idea to challenge people, I think, to give people a distant goal, because sometimes that helps people understand what decisions to make in the short term. So if we're talking the distant goal of how could you build an exoskeleton to replace the enormous and clumsy exercise equipment we have on the space station, this is what we're trying to fight that happens to an astronaut's body when we go from gravity to weightlessness. Number one, you're nauseous. Your body doesn't feel right for a bunch of different reasons as you transition to weightlessness. Number two is a lot of the natural processes start to change without, as you say, the organs hanging and the skeleton and the musculature being loaded up. So the first time you go to the bathroom in space, the first time you urinate in space, just a short period after getting to orbit, already your body is fundamentally changing the musculature and the skeletal balance. And you start to shed your skeleton immediately. The calcium and minerals start to leave you. And in my case, on my third space flight, I lost about 8% of the bone, really significant form of osteoporosis across my hips and upper femur. You also have a depression of your immune system, and we don't really understand that. Your heart doesn't have to lift the blood all the way from your feet to your head, as is happening to you when you're standing there inside your external support. So your heart, of course, will only respond to what we ask for. So your heart gets smaller, and your muscles. You can work hard against exercise equipment 2 hours a day. But that means 22 hours a day, you're the laziest person in the universe. You don't have to lift a finger. You don't have to hold your head up. So even though you may be able to exercise some muscle groups, a lot of the fine muscles, a lot of the things that get exercised without even thinking about it under gravity, they're not challenged at all. So we get muscle atrophy, muscle loss, we get bone loss. We have a big fluid redistribution. There's nothing to drain your sinuses and drain the fluid out of your head down to your legs. So we end up with significant edema and swelling in our upper body. And as a singer, that's awful to deal with because your sinuses are never clear and your throat and tongue are always a little bit swollen. There is a significant change to the human body, and we're just starting to figure out what's the right way to counteract that.
And so, an astronaut, I found it fascinating as I was studying this, that an astronaut experiences very similar challenges as I might experience living and sitting in my wheelchair day in, day out. When we sit, we begin to die. But I too need to fully weight bear in my legs. I have loss of bone density. So a lot of the similarities are there. But I've heard you state, Colonel Hadfield, that as we travel through the universe, it's not the machines that is exploring the universe, let me think, it's the people. And I think that, did I say that correctly?
Yeah, essentially,
Yeah.
yes. We send out probes to tell us what we might be interested in, but the probes couldn't care less. It's fundamentally always a human thing.
And so-
and exactly right, yes. So,
And
so
just
they're
to-
a tool for us.
Right, and just to interject, so what we're seeking to do is not to mechanize humans, but to humanize machines. And so what we would like to do is to create this ultimate mobility solution. And can you just speak quickly to the validity of creating such a compact, super ultra lightweight, flexible exoskeletal suit that could optimize an astronaut's health while in space, maybe compressing the spine? I heard that the spine elongates, and astronauts have to curl up in a sleeping bag sometimes at night because it becomes quite painful. Is that correct? And then also, what do you need to do when you come back to Earth to rehabilitate?
Well, I think the fundamental core, of course, is the end game. What is it you're trying to make your body ready for? If you were going to live in space forever, then that adaptation might be to your advantage. But we are inevitably going to get on a spaceship in order to land on the moon or land on Mars or for the most part, return to Earth. So all of these things, you need to maintain your body so that it will be strong enough when you get to your ultimate destination. But also, if you're going to go outside on a spacewalk is extremely physical. So you want to maintain muscle strength and bone density when you're working against the suit outside on a spacewalk. And so we're always looking for ways to have the most efficient exercise equipment we can bring with us. And we've tried a bunch of different things. You can actually track it just through the acronyms getting longer over time. But the current acronym, which is ARED, the Advanced Resistive Exercise Device that's on the station, is pretty good, but it's huge. It takes up one whole end of one of the modules of the space station. And it's not perfect. It does pretty well. We have that and a treadmill and an exercise bicycle. We're always looking for ways to try and keep the large muscles strong and not wasting weight, to exercise and load up the large bones so that we don't have them slowly get dissolved by the body, but also all of the fine stuff and the cardiovascular. And any solution that can be come up with that saves weight and volume on the space station would be very valuable. Also, if there's other applications, maybe to help support us when we get to Mars after a long voyage, or to be able to strap on, like when I came back from space, I wore an anti-G suit on my lower half of my body for a couple days just to help my heart and my cardiovascular system readapt. Mm-hmm. We're only limited by our own imagination. And who could have thought of the suit that you're wearing 100 years ago, or that my dad had a knee replaced, or new lenses in the eyeballs, or how we repair broken and damaged bits of the human body. It's going in leaps and bounds. And I think to give a higher purpose to it, to look for a way to solve multiple problems at once, it's a brilliant idea, and it's a big idea.
Thank you. Well, I've often thought that you have to walk before you run. And I was never, it was beyond my wildest imaginings that in my lifetime, when I was paralyzed 23 years ago, that I would be standing before you today in a bionic exoskeleton suit. But this is just the beginning of this technology. I'm a big dreamer. You have always talked about dreaming, and you've been exposed to beauty, things absolutely beautiful. I live for sunsets and sunrises, and I've heard you speak and say that you've seen a sunset and a sunrise every 45 minutes for half a year. And, and I know that, we'll wrap up really quickly, but I do want to ask you this question because it's a fascinating story. You mentioned that a spacesuit is, in essence, an exoskeleton, and it takes you out on a spacewalk. And can you articulate for us just quickly what it's like to be outside in space together with the world, moving through space? And then I know you had a very adverse situation that caused you to become blind.
Yeah, that's going to be hard to answer in 5 words or less, so I'm not up for that this year.
I know, but...
I've seen more than my share of sunrises and sunsets because I've been around the world, 2,600 times. But
wow.
the gorgeousness of our planet, and it's easy to think about or to look around the particular square. I mean, Aspen is a lovely part of the world, but the world is rife with loveliness. It is constantly refreshing itself with beautiful places. And to go around the world every 92 minutes, that just slaps you in the face. It's easy to get overwhelmed by negativity and by the limited nature of individual thinking and the panic attack that the news media constantly pours onto our heads. It is lovely to be able to take 90 minutes and circle the actual world once and see the whole thing, or to go around it 16 times a day so you see all 7 billion people in one day. You get a great sense of optimism that comes from it, our resourcefulness, the resourcefulness of the world itself, the ability for the world to heal itself, the fact that we're doing very short-sighted, self-indulgent things to the world right now, but that the world has withstood much worse than us. And the fact that the only way that we can truly get that perspective is through the combination of a technology that puts us in a new place and then human interpretation that allows us to truly understand it, and then trying to share it afterwards, because an idea does need, in fact, sharing to grow. And you're right, during one of my spacewalks, I was blinded. There was contamination in the suit, and for half an hour, one of my senses was gone. I lost the ability to see while I was outside holding onto a spaceship with one hand. But it was probably the most peaceful time in my life, to think of where I was, to be able to just hold on and talk about the problem and wait for my eyes to hopefully clear, talk to Scott that I was out with, and talk about how we were going to drag me back inside if I couldn't get my eyes to work again. But at the same time, to think about the exquisiteness of where I was and how I was sensing it now with having lost just one of my senses. It was actually surprisingly calm and peaceful. It was a delight when I could see again and get back to work because I had a whole bunch of tasks in front of me. But I think misfortune is much more a word than a fact. And what we do with things when they go wrong, or what we do with what we see as limitations, that's what really defines us as individuals and as a species. And I've gotten in a one-man submarine and gone hundreds of feet below the surface of the water in order to explore the history of life on Earth in some little freshwater lakes up in the mountains, the Rockies of Canada. And I've been inside vehicles, extensions of my own skeleton beyond the Earth's atmosphere. And who could have imagined that? So I think your challenge that you're putting out to everybody, I mean, you are standing evidence of it, but the challenge you're putting out is a good one. And thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the discussion today.
Colonel Hadfield, if you can still hear me, I just want to thank you. I do not limit myself with my own dreams, and we will be, I encourage you to follow our journey with bridgingbionics.org. And I thank you, Colonel Hadfield, from Aspen, Colorado, for your kindness, for your inspiration to me, and for your time. Much love, and I want to give you a bionic hug one day in person. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That was phenomenal. Thank you, Amanda. That whole procedure, Amanda,
Yes.
everything she said, everything she thought, everything she wrote comes from Amanda's brain. It's her whole idea. She actually advises the people who are building exoskeleton on what's needed next because of her own experience. And it's she who got Colonel Hadfield to come and be with us today. So I think she deserves tremendous. Yo, yo, yo! Woo, woo!
It's got to start somewhere. New Horizons took 9 years to get to Pluto, and look at the miracles that are unfolding. So just watch me.
Again, hard act to follow. Really quickly, as we're rushing all the time, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Ed Harrold. Have we got the right lights on, or should they need to be up? Lights, some lights. In any case, I first met Ed Harrold at a sports symposium, and I kind of couldn't believe what I was seeing because everything he talked about combined sports performance, breath, and the brain, and meditation, and yoga, and cognition, and optimal performance, and complete calm. I'm very happy to introduce a very talented man, Ed Harrold.
Good afternoon, everyone. What an amazing day. It's been just mind-blowing, brain-blowing, just being around all these great talents and doctors and scientists and physicists and PhDs and neurosurgeons. And the only acronym after my name is Junior. But my mom is really proud that I'm here today. So it's a big day in the Harrold house. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about performance, flow, human excellence, getting out of your own way, putting your heart out in front of your head, and just learning how to go for it with the lowest heart rate as possible. Now, we know that respiration rates equal heart rates. The faster you breathe, the more the heart will beat. We know that when we were born, we were all born nasal breathers. Every animal on earth breathes through its nose its entire life unless it's hunting or if it's being hunted. In our culture, mouth breathing has become the norm. And look at the stress levels. Look at the inflammation. Look at the diseases that used to come in the 70s and 80s, 90s years old, and now they're coming on to folks in their 40s and the 50s. And I have some theories I'd like to share with you today that we can really use our breath as one of the major tools to improve how we feel about ourselves, improve our cognitive ability to get out of our own way and release that self-sabotage gene, and fulfill our passion and purpose before we lose the fire in our belly. So to begin with, if you could just slide forward on your chair just a little bit so your back is off the back jack, so that when you breathe, there's no impediment to the breath moving down the back of the body. We just think the breath moves along the front of the body, but actually when you breathe, the whole container fills like a barrel. So taking your back off the back jack, there's more air moving down into your pelvis to stimulate DEA, digestion, elimination, and assimilation. And inflammation and waste in the gut have a huge impairment to how the brain is going to perceive what's happening in the present moment. Learning how to breathe through your nose and remembering that you're a nasal breather is fundamental to keeping you alive and healthy and performing mentally strong well into your later years. So if you could close your eyes for a moment and become aware that your autonomic nervous system is breathing for you based on your mental perception of what you perceive is going on right now. If you feel safe and you find value in the breath, you'll find that you're actually breathing very slowly, your heart rate is down, and you're controlling your thoughts. Your thoughts are not controlling you. If you find no value in breath or this is a waste of time, you'll notice your breath is shallow, bumpy, and jumpy, and your heart rate is up and your mind is off on what's happened before or what might happen later tonight or 10 years from now. So you have a lot more control than you think. So let's just begin to slow the inhale down and feel that diaphragm muscle pressing down into your enteric nervous system at the top of the abdomen, stimulating 95% of your serotonin secretions and 50% of your dopamine. Feel the structure in your low back. And as you inhale slower and the energy rises from the gut to the collarbone, notice the stabilization of the cerebral activity so that both prefrontal cortexes can communicate through the corpus callosum and you can communicate with whole messages rather than fragmented messages. Now, if you start to exhale longer than your inhale in time, the brain begins to relax and not sense threat. And when your brain doesn't sense threat, your body will metabolize its fat stores rather than its glycogen and sugar reserves. So you're stalling aging, and you're actually in a weight loss program right now. And you're not even exercising. If you slow that exhale down, begin to feel the massage in the lower lobes of your lungs and the top of your heart. And the lower lobes of the lungs are imbued with parasympathetic nerve endings. And there is your serotonin. There's your vagal tone. There is the amplification of your personal awareness. On the next several inhales, after they're complete, hold the breath in for 2 or 3 seconds. And just create a blank slate. And you'll begin to notice your brain is already meditating, but your mind has left the meditation channel in the brain. Exhale as slowly as you can so you can harness the positive parts of the carbon dioxide on the exhale. There's also an oxygen molecule in the exhale. And if you exhale slowly, I have a theory that the brain and the body's tissues will extract the good part of the exhale. Add it to the 2 oxygen molecules of the inhale, and you'll have a third more stamina to move through your day. Now add a little exhalation, a little longer, and then hold out the breath just for a moment. Notice what happens in the brain there. It's a little different reaction, but at least you're paying attention. And folks who pay attention are usually much more successful than people who are unconscious with their eyes open. Just take a moment to let the body breathe on its own now, and just let your head move around the room in its own unique way. Relax your low jaw, relax your eyes back into the orbital ridge, and just massage your occipital ridge and the cervical nerves and the trachea and the esophagus and your thyroid, and just notice if you're getting a serotonin secretion that's allowing thoughts to slow down so you have a greater command over the pace of your thoughts. Bring your head back to steady. Take a deep breath in through your nose and exhale out through your mouth with your favorite howl. And when you feel ready, lift your upper eyelid off your lower eyelid and just feel your sensory perception. This is the type of awareness that I like folks to be in high performance athletics. And when you can start to train the inspiratory and expiratory muscles of inhale, muscles and exhale, you can stay much more relaxed in performance states or flow states. Stephen talked this morning about flow states. Well, I can show you how to hack into these flow states every single moment in athletics, corporate performance, individual performance, and you can transcend that left prefrontal cortex that always has something to say when you're not having your best day. So step one, learning to control your breath is kind of the secret trick to learning how to control your perception of what's happening. Sometimes I call it breathe, perceive, and receive. It happens in microseconds of our life. And every moment of our life is a teachable moment. So as we consciously breathe, we're present. I'm in the present moment. I'm in the now moment. And there's a reason why they call it the present moment, because that's the only moment that you have any control over, where you can interact with the creative forces of the universe. You can't recreate what's already happened. There's no need to. Our whole life is a series of premieres. There's no sequels. Nothing's happening the same way it did the first time, even though it might appear that way. So feel each moment of your life as an opportunity to help yourself get out of your own way, perform at the highest levels of possible, and sometimes just be the smile for someone else who might have lost their smile today, so that we know we're all in this together. When I begin to control the length of my breath, in other words, how long it's taking me to inhale and exhale, the longer it takes me to inhale or exhale or taking less breaths per minute, the more it triggers the parasympathetic nervous system to become dominant. And when we have parasympathetic dominance in athletic performance, it stalls the debilitating effects of cortisol and adrenaline, inflammation and acidity, free radicals flowing through the brain at night so you can't sleep. So taking less breaths per minute is where we first like to begin with folks. The depth of the breath. How far can you inhale before you can't inhale any longer? Just sitting in your chair right here, if you inhale 5% longer than you normally do, it feels pretty good. And that's a little workout right there. You feel your heart rate go up? But watch how it comes right back down real fast. So that's the parasympathetic presence, because you're breathing through your nose, not your mouth. Notice the depth of your exhale. How far can you exhale before there's strain and the next inhale is disturbed? We really want to work on the exhale as a culture, but we also want to work on it in athletics. There's magic in our carbon dioxide, and most of us inhale through our nose and exhale through our mouth, or inhale through the mouth and exhale through the nose, and we use far, far too much energy and vitality to get from point A to point B. And here comes the adrenal fatigue, here comes the acidity, here comes the wear and tear injuries. And then when you have to, if you're an athlete and you can't move your body, then there's all this, depression and stress, and then you're forced to take up a seated meditation practice. And that's usually not too good. Now, if I was a hypothalamus, I would be completely concerned with the pace of my breathing. If I was breathing quickly, my hypothalamus would be triggered that I would be in trouble, or I would be hunting, and the HPA axis would fire up, and I would get a lot of energy going to my muscles and bones, but what is the level of threat? So I'm always looking to slow down the pace of the breathing, so I'm almost scrubbing the blood of impurities all the time, alkalizing my blood as much as I can and removing acidity as much as I can when I'm working with my clients. So as you can see, it's going to have a profound effect on the four mapping systems of how we try to hold things together physically. Anytime you're physically moving your body, there's a story there, and that story is based in emotion and feeling. These feelings, these emotions, they have a profound effect on your mental experience, the story you're telling yourself. And in the background, there obviously is some sort of a spiritual experience that we all have the ability to go through to get beyond our ego. When we're breathing, the nasal turbines and the villi of the nose, it's an amazing system. The nose is an amazing thing. And it plays predominantly with the autonomic nervous system. Breathing up the right nostril, the energy that's moving into the right nostril is going into the left prefrontal cortex, and predominantly that's sympathetic or hot or warming. It's an accelerant. And It's going to bring up a slight sympathetic act of cortisol and adrenaline. You'll see a slight spike in the heart rate. When the inhale is more dominant up the left nostril, it's more parasympathetic. It's more cooling. It's more hitting the brakes, rest and digest. And that's going to stimulate that right prefrontal cortex, that nonverbal, intuitive, creative, the ability to go beyond what your ego is telling you can do in your time-space contractions in the left prefrontal cortex. So as the breathing evolves during every day, the right and left nostril alternate which one's going to be more efficient every 90 minutes to 3 hours. So if you're trying to balance your checkbook and you're having trouble balancing your checkbook, put your fingertips under your nostrils and all you'll find is the left nostril's more open than the right, and it's taking more time to transcend the corpus callosum where you do math in the left side of your brain. You're not dumb. You haven't forgotten how to do math. Or if you're trying to be creative and you can't find the creative flow to write or dance or whatever you're going to find in the arts, it's most likely because the right nostril's more open than the left. But fundamentally, this switching of the two hemispheres through these nostrils is how we keep our body temperature of 98.6. It's our HVAC system, so to speak, the physiology of the body, which can give you greater access to the psychology of the brain. So before we can get deep into the brain, let's take a look at this if you want to live longer, if you would like to be more dynamic, the diaphragm muscle is the number one muscle for you in regard to stalling cellular aging, in regard to slowing down this monkey mind, this monkey brain that just won't sit still. The diaphragm muscle is a horizontal muscle when it rests neutral above the liver gallbladder, above the stomach spleen, and in the chest cage, it's underneath the lungs and the heart. And when you inhale through your nose, the diaphragm muscle is going to press vertically down onto your enteric nervous system. It's going to massage your GI tract. It's going to give you wonderful support in L4 and L5. And it's going to stimulate strong digestive flow so you can remove mucus, phlegm, fat, inflammation from the inner walls of your organs. The diaphragm is the primary muscle to connect the lower body with the upper body using the least amount of energy as possible to allow that to happen. Now, you can engage all your abdominal muscles and you can engage your core muscles to help your lower body do that. But once you begin to strengthen the diaphragm muscle, it's a deep, deep muscle. It's underneath the sheaths that we normally get in Pilates or any of the core classes that you can see. So as you begin to strengthen this diaphragm muscle, you're going to have inspiratory muscle strength. And the stronger the diaphragm muscle becomes pressing down, the more dynamic we become in the rib cage, becoming more elastic. And when the 12 ribs become really elastic, it's easier for us to fill our lungs to their full 5 core capacity. The lungs are amazing. They're huge, but they're not muscle. They're tissue. And they can only expand as much as the rib cage is elastic and the diaphragm muscle is strong. So learning how to stay with your inhale, it takes a lot of energy for you to be you, and you want to have that energy relaxed. So learning how to train that diaphragm muscle on the inhale to really push down and holding the breath in for a little bit of time is going to really help the rib cage be reshaped from the inside out. So you're going to be able to take less breaths per minute. And less breaths per minute is so important. If you're taking more than 12 breaths a minute in your daily life, your whole day is spent in fight or flight syndrome. Your thoughts, you're probably having about 60 to 80,000 thoughts every 24 hours. If you're taking less than 12 breaths per minute, you're probably entertaining 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. So either way, your mind's job and the brain's job is to create thought. But there isn't a person I meet who isn't thinking enough. It's that slow the quantity of the thoughts down, raise the quality. So this increased endurance capacity is going to come by a more dynamic inhale. Oxygen's an amazing, powerful drug. And moving it deeper through your tissues, moving it deeper through your nervous system is going to provide you great power. So work on, if you take one thing out of this today, stop mouth breathing and learn how to breathe through your nose for the rest of your life. That would be the one thing I would want you to take from this is stop this mouth breathing, especially in exercise. Slow down Let your ego dissolve and just work at the pace that's correct for you based on your cardiovascular ability of breathing through your nose. You'll live a heck of a lot longer, and you'll probably bypass a lot of the depression, the Alzheimer's, the dementia, the schizophrenia, a lot of the brain diseases that we see when we get older. The vagus nerve, we heard a little bit about this today. It's this amazing nerve, and the science that's coming out on this. It's so important for this for athletes to get more out of less, to work smarter, not harder, to be able to get out of your own way, to really thin your blood and have a high level of hemoglobin and blood protein levels. This vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, runs down from the brain, intersects at C5, C6, and begins its wandering journey through your inner world, coming down through the heart and lungs, piercing the diaphragm, moving through every organ of the abdomen, even down into the organs of the pelvis and your reproductive organs. And the breathing through the nose has an amazing effect of amplifying the frequency and vibration of the vagus nerve. And when this vagus nerve is amplified, you're doing all I think you can do for yourself, physically and mentally at that point, to perform at the highest level possible with the least trade-off of what you're trying to achieve in that moment. Serotonin secretion, obviously when we have serotonin secretion, we're going to have all sorts of good stuff in the brain. Synchronizing the brain. The breathing is amazing in regard to doing that. I have a theory that when we can activate the vagus nerve and we can activate a lot of serotonin and alkalinity and saturate our body with oxygen, when we're in transitional points, rather than going back into the animal brain or the HPA axis, whenever there's trouble, adrenaline shows up and we move into a defensive or aggressive stance, I think we can move into more of a feminine, compassionate stance, and we can transition to a hypothalamus, pineal gland serotonin secretion, and we can reason with the present moment without going into war every time something's not what we're used to. So as you move through your athletic routines, and all of us are athletes. If you're breathing, you're an athlete. Number one, control the length, depth, and pace, and let that set the tone for your autonomic nervous system. Always inhale as slowly as possible so you're getting some parasympathetic response in the inhale. Hold the breath in and out, but not to the point where you're depriving the brain of oxygen. Just practice taking less breaths per minute. The goal in all of this is try to get to an uninhibited inhale with the least amount of acidity and wear and tear in the brain, least amount of inflammation in the cells of your body as you're trying to keep yourself healthy. Reducing your blood pressure is going to increase your heart rate variability. And heart rate variability, having a strong parasympathetic dominance in your exercise or corporate routine is very, very important. Obviously, we need to meditate. When you exercise, it's meditation in motion. That's all it is. It's great. We're all kinesthetic visual learners. Move your body, watch your body, be with it, but don't judge it, don't compete against it, and don't label it. Try to neutralize your perception of time. Most of us are always playing catch up, and man-made time, we have problems with that. Neuroplasty, your brain is always changing. Don't be afraid of change. Nothing is permanent except for love. We want to do this so that we can not destroy our joints, ligaments, cartilage, and we want to minimize skeletal and muscle degeneration from all the frequency, intensity, and duration that we get from Western exercise. And I teach down at the Aspen Club, and we're a resort now that is research-based. We want to study everything in regard to human performance. Our owner is in the back, Michael Fox, and he's dedicated himself to making not only Aspen a great place, but bringing that Aspen idea nationally and globally to change the planet so we can all live a joyful, happy life. Thank you very much.